How's it going, Twitch? My name is Skull, and on behalf of East Asia Soft, welcome to today's stream. Today's Sunday, which means that it's time for me to continue my playthrough of SeaBed, a Yuri visual novel. Brand new visual novel that I just started last week, and I am expecting it to continue to be a really cool game. I guess this is where we were at. Whew. Let's go. I don't know how to properly start this. I guess I'll just go into it. I turned the handle to stop the rain. Several drops of water trailed down my body and fell onto the bathroom floor. The faint afternoon glow filtered in through the small bathroom window and met the steam inside, blanketing the room in a pale blue light. Also, hello, Nian. How are you? I'm doing good. I'm going to Olive Garden after I'm done with the stream. Looking forward to that. A rubber duck was floating in the half-filled bathtub I'd forgotten to unplug. After gazing at it for a few moments through half-shut eyes, I lifted a towel off the rack and left the bathroom while scrubbing my skin with the thing. Once I felt dry enough for comfort, I put on the underwear I'd left on the dryer. Ouch! I hit my shin against a box in the corridor while drying my hair. I raised my hurt leg and proceeded to hop the rest of the way on one foot, kicking a roll of packing tape out of the way in the process. Out of the multiple boxes in the corridor, the one I collided with had yet to be fastened. Takako's sunflower-themed shirt stared back at me from inside. I opened the door at the end of the corridor, and upon entering the living room, turned left to the kitchen and peeked into the fridge. After grabbing a bottle of barley tea from inside, I closed the fridge's door. I took a glass cup from the cupboard, filled it up with tea, and gulped its contents down in a single breath. After refilling my cup and returning the bottle to the fridge, I continued to the living room with glass in hand, where I picked up the remote from the table and flicked on the TV. I pulled out the makeup box and the hairdryer from the cabinet and made myself comfortable on the sofa. I began drying my hair, catching only short bits and pieces of what the news anchor on TV was saying. Finishing that, I changed into a pair of jeans and a colorful tunic before finally leaving the house. Find it interesting that the story started with Takako's perspective, but it's been Sachiko's this entire time. That will be 300 yen. I placed the coins I had prepared as I waited in line into the tray. Thank you very much. The clerk took care of the basket while I picked up the paper bag. Hello, Flea Buster. How are you doing? Yep, SeaBed. I left the general store and continued down the sidewalk. It was now illuminated by a slightly stronger light compared to the morning. I guess they're not on their tropical paradise island anymore. As the traffic light signal between the police station and the department store lit up in green, a mass of people who had been waiting for it jerked forward like a wave. As I tried to overtake a man in front of me, our shoulders bumped. It seemed like the amount of people doubled here during afternoons. I continued crossing the street, looking down at the shoes of the people ahead of me as my paper bag bumped into someone to my side. I stopped and placed my paper bag into my handbag. You'll get hit by a car if you keep spacing out in the middle of the street, Sachi. Oh, this is Takako. I raised my face in response to clearly hearing my name. However, the person to whom that voice belonged was nowhere to be seen. Maybe it wasn't Takako. I turned to a narrow alley between two large buildings, leaving the street behind me. As I continued on, I glanced at my wristwatch. Seeing the time, I decided to hasten my pace. Maybe it wasn't Takako. This music sounds familiar. Is this in one of the Pretty Boys games? The bell above the cafe's door gave off an energetic chime as I stepped inside. As the establishment's front door was down a short flight of stairs below street level, it naturally had no windows and was dimly lit inside. Yep, this is definitely from one of the Pretty Girls games. That's excellent. See? I take my job very seriously. I knew this music. The wall lights would be on all the time, coloring the interior in red and orange. I continued further into the shop, my footsteps silenced by the lush carpet. Sitting at a round table next to a wall behind a row of low handrails, barely reaching to my waist, a red-haired woman, Narasaki Hibiki, raised a hand to catch my attention. Over here! I went up the steps to her table as she folded the newspaper she had been reading. I thought I came early. My appointment finished today, I don't know who's talking though. My appointment finished early, so I thought I might as well come ahead of you. There was an empty milk pack, a half-finished cup of coffee, and what looked like a cake plate in front of Narasaki. There was nothing but a silver paper and a few crumbs left on it. Narasaki wore a lab coat over her pale blouse and skirt. You came in your work clothes? They're the best clothes I have. I sat down facing her. The dim light from the walls fell on her white coat, dyeing it in a pale hue of orange. So, you really did become a doctor. You didn't believe me? Narasaki stretched her back. It suits you. I'm glad to hear it. Narasaki curled her lips slightly, letting out one of her characteristic sighs. I hope I didn't ruin your schedule by contacting you out of nowhere. Don't worry about it. It's been a while since we've seen each other, so I was curious about you myself. When was it? Back in elementary school? You don't remember? I narrowed my eyes, scanning through my memories, but Narasaki gave me a dismissive wave of the hand. It's okay, not like it was anything important. If you say so. The waiter placed a cup of steaming coffee in front of me. He then placed a cup full of sugar cubes and a small milk bottle next to it before wordlessly returning to the counter. I stirred my coffee with a spoon, creating a miniature whirlpool in the middle of as I poured some milk into it. My small, white whirlpool kept on spinning. As I sat there, satisfied with my whirlpool, I heard Narasaki chuckle. What? Oh, don't mind me. Her eyes were fixed on my hand, stirring the white coffee. I left the spoon on the tray and took a sip from my coffee, letting its familiar bitterness spread across my mouth. I felt as though Narasaki was snickering at me again. They have good cakes here. Do you want me to guess what you've ordered? Try your luck. A rare green tea-flavored cheesecake. How did you know? You could tell from the wrapping paper. Oh. Narasaki picked up her own cup. Did you like it? Yeah, particularly the cream. I wonder if they used condensed milk with it or something. It tasted a bit like the mochi ice cream they sell back home. Now that you mention it, that sure brings back memories. You think they make their cakes here? No, they bring them over from the cake shop next door. It's part of the same brand. If you liked it, we can buy something there on your way home. I'd personally recommend the sunflower. What kind of cake is that? It's a fruit cake with a chocolate base. Lots of cream in it, too. I see. Maybe I'll check it out. I recommend it. As the background music that filled the shop slowly faded out, a melody of some classical piece soon took its place. Narasaki looked around the shop. Something wrong? I just thought it was pretty convenient for a cafe and a confectionery to pair up like this. Does such a thing as inconvenient pairing even exist? There's a place near where I live that runs both a cafe and a barber shop. I guess you could enjoy a drink while you get your hair done, but that means there's little point in going there if all you want is a cup of coffee. Perhaps they have something to make it compelling. You can never tell unless you go check it out yourself. I guess it needs further investigation. Glancing at my wristwatch, I noticed how almost half an hour had already passed. Wow, it's barely been 10 minutes. 10 minutes?! We've only been chatting for half an hour, so don't worry. Seems so, yeah. You keep checking the time. Are you in a hurry or something? Does it look that way? I thought it was normal. I should have contacted you earlier, but you always end up having some sort of work pile up at the worst of times. You're busy? I've had my hands full lately, yes. With work? Yes. I've heard you were in the design business. That's right, I'm running my own company. Who told you? Good question. I don't quite remember anymore. I see. Is your office nearby? Yes. And can you make a living off it? I get by. I'm getting less offers compared to before the economy crashed. Mood. But there's still enough of a demand. Well, it's just me and 3 employees, so it brings in enough money to sustain 4 people at least. So, you were saying you're getting less offers, but you're actually getting busier? Pretty much. Things got more hectic after Takako disappeared. Disappeared?! What? Hang on, hold the phone, time out! What happened? Last week they were at a tropical paradise getting frisky, and now she's gone? And has been for a while? I thought this was a Yuri novel, not a mystery novel. Wasn't easy finding someone to fill her spot. Disappeared. Yes. Do you remember her? I remember the 3 of us playing together when we were kids, yeah. Yes, that's her. We even started the company together, but then she goes and vanishes without a trace during a crucial time like this. Just how uncontrollable can she be? She drives me insane sometimes. Nagasaki let out a small chuckle. I see you've got your plate full. You could say that again. You're not feeling exhausted lately, are you? Have I been acting strange or something? Not really, but you've always had trouble saying no to people. I mean, we made you act as class president and run the club as well. I was worried you might be putting too much burden on yourself again. You didn't make me do anything. I did all that voluntarily. Well, in any case, overworking yourself is a surefire way to build up stress. I suppose you're right, but I'm not stressed out. My job is pretty much my hobby anyway. Glad to hear that. You work at a psychiatry clinic around here, right? Nagasaki, still holding her coffee cup, shifted her eyes from the menu to me. Yeah. So, you listen to people with mental problems like schizophrenia or chronic depression, analyze them and give them advice on what to do? Something along those lines? I see you're watching the same TV shows as me. We have a case or two like that once in a blue moon, sure. But most of our patients are senile old folks who come to talk about their grandkids, or housewives complaining about their daily chores and husbands. Usually all you have to do to fix their problems is hear them out. Hard to believe the girl we played doctor with as kids actually became one. Nagasaki ran her hand across her face. Our little clinic is hardly an establishment to brag about, really. There's a big hospital nearby, so we get very few people. You wanted to become a doctor ever since then? Who knows? Maybe. I don't remember. Nagasaki placed the empty coffee cup back on the tray. I just like observing people. I believe that nothing happens without a reason. So when someone starts raving or acting in contradiction to common sense, I can't help getting curious about its underlying cause. It's probably the same reason why I became a psychiatrist. I see. So, I thought you wanted my help with something. Once we were done engaging in small talk about our jobs, Nagasaki swiftly shifted to the main subject at hand. Did you have any patients suffering from hallucinations? few. Are you seeing any? I think it's probably because of exhaustion, but... Nagasaki slowly leaned her head forward, seemingly deep in thought. Her forehead almost touched the cup on the tray. Do you remember the fits I had as a child? You had fits? Did I never tell you? Well, my ears would sometimes begin ringing, and nothing I did would make it go away. Nagasaki paused for a few moments, and after giving me a brief look, parted her lips to speak. Now that you mention it, I think I remember you telling me that. Ringing in the ears, huh? She mused. Yeah, I thought it would drive me crazy. Well, that could be explained by acoustic hyperesthesia. Can you tell me how exactly it would manifest? At times, I'd wake up at night and hear all the sounds around me as if they were amplified. I remember that from last week. I'd feel like my head could burst at any second. The shorter fits would pass after a few minutes, but some of the longer ones would go on for over half an hour. I realized my right hand was unconsciously touching my ear. I stopped having them around elementary school, but they came back recently. You might want to take a visit to an otorhinologist, just in case. I've already been to one. They couldn't find anything wrong with my ears. Well, they told me to come back if the symptoms grew worse. Nagasaki regarded me in complete silence and stillness. Will you? Neither the ringing nor its frequency changed at all, but I also started hearing Takako's voice in its place. Nagasaki slightly furrowed her brows. You sure it's not just your imagination? I can hear it very clearly. I emphasized the word clearly. Do you think it's an auditory hallucination? Nagasaki inhaled a breath and crossed her legs again. Well, if you hear something that cannot possibly be there, then it would be classified as that, yeah. I guessed an otorhinologist couldn't help you with that. And can you? Auditory hallucinations can be a symptom of schizophrenia, but based on our little chat today, I'm not seeing anything in you that would support such a diagnosis. And it doesn't seem to be having a severely adverse effect on your lifestyle either, as you appear perfectly aware of the fact that they are hallucinations. In short, I think you might just be exhausted. I see. We've had a lot of folk with work-related adjustment disorders lately. Most of them can be cured with a few weeks of vacation. You should probably not worry about it too much unless it starts affecting your life. So it's best if I don't think about too much about it? Basically. Okay, I understand. Thanks. I feel a bit better now. If those voices you hear become worse for whatever reason, and you get worried again, you can always come straight to my clinic. With that, she stuck a hand in her pocket and pulled out a business card. Buster, do you know something I don't? Nagasaki Mental Clinic. Psychiatrist, Nagasaki Hibiki. It had the address written on the other side. Could I get your card too, if that's okay? I wonder if I have any left. I picked up my handbag from the sofa and pulled out my card holder. However, no matter where I looked, I couldn't find any of my cards. Been there. I'm sorry. You know things, huh? Well, don't spoil it for me. I want to find out on my own. This seems excellent. Like there's something that we're going to find out that's going to be earth-shattering. May not be this week, may not be next week, may not be next month, might not even be until the end of the year, but we're going to find out something. Don't sweat it, but remember to keep one on you the next time we meet. Okay. And I'll want to hear more about your work, too. If that's what you want. Realizing that my coffee cup was empty, I promptly pulled my hand back. The chair let out a low creak as Nagasaki crossed her legs again. What time is it? What time is it? I instinctively glanced at my wristwatch again. 8:30. Oh, that late already? This place has neither a clock nor windows, so I guess that's just how they roll. Nagasaki picked up her wallet from the table, and after glancing at the receipt and taking out the amount indicated, returned it to the handbag she kept next to her. Going already? I've still got to drop by my clinic tonight. I see. What about you? Lifting her handbag from the seat, Nagasaki gave me a brief glance. I think I'll relax for a few more minutes. Hearing that, Nagasaki made a short pause before speaking up again. It's been a while since I had fun like this. Me too. About what we discussed. Remember, if you're still worried, you can always come by my clinic. Thanks. I'll do that. As she left the shop, Nagasaki placed a palm on the back of her neck, then slid it down to wave me goodbye. Is there something significant about that? I spent some time absent-mindedly gazing at the empty space in front of me that Nagasaki used to occupy. After shifting my gaze to the empty cup, I finally stood up, picked up the receipt, and continued to the counter to pay for my drink. The streets outside were already covered in darkness, with the neon signs of shops illuminating my way. I turned around and saw myself reflected in the window glass. There were faint black spots below my eyes, making me look a bit like a ghost. So I guess this novel time jumps a bit. I grabbed a pack of iced coffee from the fridge and filled my flower-patterned cup, then returned to the office with cup in hand. The office itself was a small cream-colored room with 5 office desks crammed into it. 4 of the desks faced each other, while the last one was slightly further away, positioned by the window. I headed toward that particular desk, sat down, and proceeded to turn on my computer. Sipping coffee with one hand while typing my password with the other, I listened to Takako nibble on her 10th or so candy. This had to have happened before, right? Look at Takako! So adorable. Takako, her eyes fixed on the documents, reached out towards a transparent glass jar resting next to her monitor. It was filled with colorful candies. She nimbly undid its cap, and avoiding the lemon-colored ones, picked a candy with an apple design on its wrapping. After unwrapping the thing, she quickly chucked it into her mouth. And started nibbling on it. Soon enough, she casually thrust her hand into the jar again and pulled out a lemon-colored one. Her hand stopped as she noticed the color of its wrapping. Picky, picky, picky. Want a candy, Fumi? Takako addressed the employee sitting in front of her. Oita Fumi. Uita. Fumi shifted her gaze to Takako, knitting her eyebrows. How many of those can you eat in a day? The sound you make when you're chewing is bothering me. I'm always sleepy past noon. If I don't eat something, I might fall asleep. Your sugar intake must be off the charts. Don't come crying to me when you gain weight. It's okay. My brain burns all the sugar anyway. To me, candies are like coal to a steam engine. She let out a hearty guffaw. Figuring that I'd seen enough, I rose from my desk and drew closer to them. I picked up the candy bottle from the table. I'll be confiscating this. But that's my fuel! Takako spun around as Fumi made a crooked smile behind her back. A wild Takako, observed in a natural habitat. The sound you make is bothering everyone. If you can't eat them in silence, then chew on this instead. Is it going to be gum? I held up a piece of mint gum in front of her face. Takako opened her mouth, biting the gum straight out of my hand. Gum doesn't make me feel like I've eaten anything. anything, but I guess it's better than nothing. I placed the candy bottle on my desk and resumed my accounting work. Chew, chew. I gave the completely unfazed Takako an exasperated look. Fumi did the same. That's funny. A chair let out a pleading creak. Yeah, mine does that. Takako, sitting backwards with her arm wrapped around the backrest, spun around to face another one of our employees, Inukai Takehiko. Inukai, tell me something interesting. During that meeting regarding confectionery packages, Inukai gave Fumi a quick glance. Inukai! Fumi, still immersed in work, murmured his name in a menacing tone. Inukai and Fumi were sitting at the reception room sofa next to each other. In front of them sat a representative from a confectionery company. Various drafts for package design ideas brainstormed by Fumi were lined up on the coffee table between them. I think using a caramel case for this label of this product would be better. Fumi pointed at the letters on the design they were looking at. The guest cocked his head. And so we have a design of candies interspersed between a wave of letters. Fumi continued on her own, ignoring the two men with almost visible question marks above their heads. As Fumi finally paused and gave the silent guest a questioning look, it was as though an exclamation mark appeared above Inukai's head. Fumi, I'm sorry, but could it be that you meant camel case? It seems like she's been using it wrong all her life. Not like either name makes much sense in context. Fumi raised her hands in exasperation. Well, caramel at least sounds tastier. As Takako gave Fumi a patronizing look, the chime of a bell similar to that of schools abruptly filled the room. Thanks for the funny story, Inukai. Takako stood up as the afternoon bell faded away. Sachi, it's time for lunch. She leaned over my monitor to stare at my face. I'm not deaf. Go ahead of me. I'll join you after I finish this. I'll be waiting for you with a cup of tea. I'll make it. Takako and Fumi trotted into the kitchen, leaving Inukai and me alone in the office. Before long, I finished my papers. I pulled out a lunchbox out of my bag and stood up, noticing that Inukai was still working at his desk. Are you not going to have lunch? I'm leaving in a minute. What's your plan for today? I was a bit of a seafood donburi mood. The place is going to be full by now. Oh, if there's no space, I'll make do with my regular gyuden. Inukai pulled a coin purse out of the jacket hanging on the back of his chair. Why don't you heat here with us for a change like you did before? I've been here long enough to know better. I see. I'll join you some other time, when I'm more in the mood. Inukai pushed the office chair open and left, while I continued into the reception area. Takako and Fumi were sitting on the sofa watching TV. Scorpion's lucky item for today is a red umbrella, said the loudly dressed woman on TV. Miss Takako, they're talking about your sign. An umbrella? It's not even raining outside and... red? Seriously? A cloudless blue sky stretched beyond the window. I imagine you'd stand out walking with a red umbrella on a day like this. Fumi then added, It's not like you're the type to believe in fortune-telling anyway. Hello? Fumi turned to me as I closed the door behind me. The reception room had a low, rectangle-shaped table and two sofas facing each other on each of its sides. The two were sitting on opposite sofas at the further end, near the TV. I believe in it if it's good. I sat down next to Takako. Here you go. I wonder what's in it today. I handed Takako her lunchbox. I fried yesterday's chicken leftovers with bean jam, then added the usual: scrambled eggs, fried fish, and miso soup. I placed the miso soup's flask on the table. Chili sauce! I really like this one. Takako was happy to see I didn't forget one of her favorites. Let's dig in! I opened my own, otherwise completely identical lunchbox and picked up the chopsticks. Takako was showing her lunch to Fumi. I'm a bit jealous, to be honest. I wish Ms. Sachiko made lunch for me, too. Meanwhile, Fumi's lunchbox contained stuffed peppers, slices of boiled egg, and an entire assortment of vegetables. That doesn't sound too bad. Cabbage, tomatoes, stuff like that. It's probably a cold lunch, but sounds good. Everything was ordered to maximize the effect of the colors. I see you always go the extra mile to make your lunches visually appealing. Thank you very much. Aw, man, that looks good. Did I mention I'm getting Olive Garden after this? You betcha I am. Let's eat! Tadakimasu. Takako chose to start with her scrambled eggs. So did I. After using my chopsticks to separate my scrambled eggs into two smaller pieces, I popped one into my mouth. It has a slightly strong taste. Isn't it spicier than usual? Isn't that how you prefer it? Yeah, but... I tried the other ingredients one after another. The chili sauce I made yesterday turned out just right. After spending some time eating, I took a sip from Fumi's tea, letting the sweet fragrance of apples tickle my nostrils. This brand is called London Flavor Tea. My uncle got it for me as a souvenir, and I really enjoyed it, so I figured I'd share it with you. The sweetness and bitterness were just right, and despite the strong smell of apples, I could not identify any sourness. It tasted like a perfect cup of red tea. It's very good. I left the package in the cupboard, so feel free to make it for yourselves. Takako took a sip from her own cup. It's bitter. Looking at Takako's sour expression, I couldn't suppress a faint smile. I prefer sweet apple tea. And with that, she returned to eating her lunch. Takako. Never change. Never go to Olive Garden in Japan? Well, I wasn't planning to. Also, hi, Nuru Poga. How are you doing? I'll tell you what, though. KFC in Japan. I might do that. KFC in Japan's no joke. All the windows in the office were opened wide, the curtains around them quivering as the odd light breeze would find its way into the room. I could hear the uneven buzzing of cicadas, like a server machine of sorts, from outside. Yep, cicadas, I know that sound. It's hot! As I was inspecting Inukai's design on my desk, Takako paused her work and faced Fumi at the desk opposing hers. Fumi gave her a short glance, but said nothing. Inukai continued his work in silence. I didn't know these things could still keep buzzing in October. Takako picked the paper fan off her desk and started fanning herself. Maybe it's global warming. El Nino, or whatever they call it. Fumi finally joined the conversation. Oh, that was her saying. Is that for real? For real? Don't you watch TV? No. Is that for real? For real? Don't you watch TV? The news are full of all these climate phenomena lately. I recall seeing something about that last year, but if that's abnormal every year, doesn't that make the abnormality normal instead? Summers do feel longer lately. Takako started fanning herself more strongly, letting out a contemplative groan. I wonder how long it'll continue this year. They said the heat wave might continue until the end of November. And when is autumn going to come? Do your job, people! I'd appreciate it if you did yours, too. Hey, can I turn on the air conditioner? I glanced out the window Takako had just opened. The curtains were swaying ever so faintly as a light breeze entered the room. The wind's blowing inside. You can handle a bit of hot air, can't you? I pointed at the wall next to the entrance. The place where the air conditioner's control panel was. On top of it was a sticker with the words, "Save power, save money," written on it. And wasn't it you who put that sticker on there to begin with? Was it? Takako grabbed a bottle of water and started loudly gulping its contents down. After finishing the entire bottle, she returned to work. Click, click. Click, click. Click, click. Creak. I feel like I'm going to melt. Raising her hands, she leaned against her chair. Don't worry, we'll turn on the air conditioner if you do. Fumi addressed Takako with her eyes still glued to the monitor. Can I take your word on that? And we'll make sure to put what's left of you in the ice cube tray in the freezer so you can solidify again. Takako lightly pressed her bent index finger against her jaw. I don't want to become a cube. If you start melting, I'm vacating the premises right away. Inukai joined the conversation as well. Hold your goddamn horses! At least call an ambulance for me! I would appreciate it if you would all stop running your mouths and return to work. Sachiko trying desperately to keep the house running and Takako doing everything in her power to bring it down. Okay, that's it. Now that I've grown conscious of the heat, I can't put it out of my mind. Not even changing my wallpaper to the cool sea is helping. Maybe you should try listening to some soothing music. Fumi handed Takako a CD case over the monitors. This is the electronic music I'm currently listening to. Fumi pointed at her headphones. Electronic music? The one they make with synthesizers and stuff, right? Does it really cool you down? Takako inspected the back of the CD case. It's a Folktronica summer special. The rhythm is inspired by the flow of water, so it makes you feel like you're cooling off under the sea. Fumi was passionately gesticulating with her hands and head as she explained all of this. I can't focus while listening to music. Really? I would say I have a harder time concentrating without it. Fumi took out a bag from one of her desk's drawers. Then maybe you'd prefer this? She pulled out a small blue tube and handed it to Takako. What's this? Mint gel. You have to put it on your neck, like this. Fumi made a neck-stroking motion. Takako imitated her movements, rubbing the gel from the tube on her neck. How is it? I don't feel anything gel. That's not how it works. With that, Fumi returned to work. Aren't you hot, Inukai? Takako turned to Inukai next. Inukai's fingers, previously dancing on the keyboard at a brisk pace, had now halted. Hot? I didn't notice until you mentioned it. I don't feel it much if I concentrate on the job at hand. Inukai readjusted his glasses. That's the problem. I can't concentrate. Takako leaned heavily against the back of her chair. How about take a break and cool down? That might be a good idea. Pressing her hand against the back of her chair, Takako was about to stand up. Wait, they're having a sale at the grocery store today, right? Yeah? Wait, the other way around. Wonder if I should make curry tonight if we get home early. Takako fell back on her seat. Let's do our best to finish on time today! and began frantically typing at her keyboard. Whoa, that was simple. Takako Tamer. Inukai and Fumi had something to say. Look, I'm not a Beastmaster. She's just simple as an animal. Yo, private convos during work go against protocol. Or are you planning to stay late and cash in on the overtime? 3 pairs of eyes shifted to Takako. Are you kidding me? Takako, never change. Oh, it even got dark outside in the game. Cool. I suppose that's it for today. I'll be leaving then. As the lights began to turn on in the corridors, Inukai left the office with his bag and jacket in hand. Fumi had a personal errand to run, so she left at the usual time. Takako opened the door to the office shortly after Inukai had left. Where's Inukai? He just left. Did you need him for something? Nope. Takako returned to her desk and sat down on her chair. You're about done, right? Yes. All the program windows on my monitor had already been closed. It's pretty late, so I guess it'd be too much of a pain to go ahead with the curry plan. Want to eat out somewhere? We were so busy this month I couldn't even spend almost all my money. I suppose you're right. We can go. Takako stood up, flashing a smile. I'll switch the lights off. You just take care of the lock. All right. Takako disappeared beyond the door. I locked the windows as well as the door to the kitchen. Oh, that was cool. Then I pulled down the blinds, too. As I flipped the light switch near the entrance, the room was swallowed by darkness. All the electronic devices were safely turned off. I could only hear the buzzing of the fridge from the kitchen. I left the office, locked the doors from outside, and continued down the dark corridor, illuminated only by a set of dim LED lights. Takako was waiting for me in the car by the entrance. I opened the door and sat in the front seat next to her. Hey! Takako spoke up as I arrived. So, decided on a place yet? Of course! You okay with Western food? Seeing my nod, oh, the other way around, Takako started up the car. It moved so smoothly I couldn't even tell she was changing gears. What was that phone call in the afternoon all about? Mr. Sasaki from the Tenors had apparently conquered another mountain. Takako halted the car just before the white stop line. After looking to the left and right, she turned onto the main street, leaving our alley behind. Don't they have wheels on the right in Japan? Isn't mountain climbing getting a bit too much for the guy given his age? I'd say so. Which is why I asked the university's mountain climbing club to accompany him. This might be the other way around. You did? Yes. I had an errand to run back on campus, so I figured why not? As the traffic light turned green, the line of cars began to edge forward. How did you even come up with an idea like that? Remember when we talked about the Alps the other day? How you can go there and hire a local instructor who will help you carry your bags and build tents for like 500 yen? Ah, that does ring a bell. Takako, with her hands still glued to the wheel, leaned slightly forward to confirm the neighboring traffic lane. There weren't many cars on the road, leaving more than enough space for us. And the visuals are actually pretty impressive. Takako checked the side mirror and changed traffic lanes after signaling. Last time I met him, Mr. Sasaki was going on about how much of a shame it was that Japan had no service like that. And when I talked to him over the phone, he told me how happy he was to have finally gotten a chance to climb that thing, while also making new friends in the process. That's nice to hear. The slight swaying of the car felt pleasantly sleep-inducing. Sachi. What? I mentioned this before, but I think we should increase the number of departments at our office. Even though it's only the 4 of us? That's precisely why. Right now, no one really thinks much about the differences in their duties. If we get stumped on something, someone else just comes in to help out. But now that we get more offers, everyone's forced to stay overtime. I think we should start defining clear roles for everyone. Then we'll be able to tell exactly what's holding us back and what can be improved. So what kind of roles do you have in mind? I think we should continue what we're already doing for the most part. You as the manager, Fumi as the accountant. Meanwhile, me and Inukai should concentrate more on the business side of things. I should be in the first department of design, doing planning and development, while Inukai should be in the second department, mainly taking care of orders and dealing with clients. What about the clients you've been managing until now? If possible, I'd like him to take over. As the head of the second department, Inukai should have complete authority over everything client-related. He said he wanted more freedom, so I get the feeling he'd be up for it. And if we're going to get bigger in the future, we'll be able to increase the amount of people in any of the departments. At one point, we can hire someone to take over your management duties. And since I don't need to deal with customers anymore, I get more free time as well. If that works out, we'll have more time for trips and our hobbies and all that fun stuff. I'm starting to see what your main objective is. Well, duh! All I care about is having fun with you. I recall telling you that when I quit my last job. I suppose you did. I closed my eyes, remembering how we ended up quitting our previous jobs. Going independent after having saved some money was mainly Takako's idea. She might seem a bit of a scatterbrain from time to time, but her ability to plan for the future far exceeded mine. I don't mind if you sleep. My head nodded as the car rolled over a bump in the road. I straightened my back. I'll stay awake. I glanced out the window and saw the neon lights of the radio tower gleaming in the distance. There were more cars on the road than before. Were you sleeping? Just a little bit. Takako checked the side mirror, then turned the wheel to the left. I could feel the slight onset of centrifugal force press me against the seat. As our car entered the new road, it began soundlessly speeding up. Maybe they got an EV. We've been working so much overtime, so much lately. This week will be the last, I promise. I guess it'll take some time before we get anything this big again. Yeah. Giving an absent-minded reply, I gazed at the orange lights through the windshield. I leaned against my seat, narrowing my eyes. You are tired, aren't you? Takako made a faint smile, observing me from the corner of her eyes. How far are we? We should be there in about 10 minutes, I think. Will you take that nap after all? I might not wake up if I give in now. Want to listen to some music? Takako reached out towards the audio panel. I'm not in the mood right now. Okay. Takako returned her hands to the wheel. I won't fall asleep if we talk. Want to hear a scary story? Maybe some other time. Takako heaved a contemplative groan. How about a story about my adventures overseas? I was there too, remember? What was our first trip again? Taiwan. Ah, that's right. Our plane landed in Taipei and we took a bus straight to our hotel. Did you forget? Outside it felt like we were in a sauna, but the interior of the bus was freezing cold, right? My sweat dried up in an instant. Where did we go first? I think we first went to a convenience store. We bought an instant camera. I remember you kept going on and on about how they had so many convenience stores around. And that weird juice we bought? Turns out it was strawberry-flavored toothpaste. Ugh. We also went to the kingdom of the little people. There was this jet coaster spinning at an insane speed, right? Yeah, I remember that. I picked a side seat, so I thought I'd get crushed when he fell on me. I told you I didn't want to get on, but it was fun. What else did we do? Feeling my eyelids grow heavier, I finally closed them. Hello? Did I get you embarrassed? I felt too drowsy to even open my mouth. I couldn't even make out what she was saying anymore. You fell asleep? Takako seemed to be talking. It sure was fun. I hope we can go again sometime. All these adventures around the world these two are taking. Although I suppose Japan to Taiwan isn't that far. Clank, clank. I opened my eyes as my seat jerked violently. The lights inside the train fell dark for a moment, but soon returned to normal. Realizing that I felt cold, I fixed the collar of my thick cardigan. The night train was almost completely devoid of passengers. There was only one family sitting diagonally across me that boarded the train at the same station as I did. Trails of raindrops trickled down the window behind them in the opposite direction the train was moving. I want a chopsticks toy. The boy with the hoodie turned to the man, who was most likely his father. Chopsticks? I've never even heard of a toy like that. All my classmates have it. I asked Santa to get me one for Christmas. I see. What do these chopsticks look like exactly? The boy made an odd shape with his hands. The rain grew fiercer by the minute, brushing against the windows in a wave-like pattern. I saw a town in the distance, its streets distorted as I looked at them through the rain-soaked windows. A heavy storm cloud, blocking out even the moonlight, loomed over the cityscape, covering it in darkness. I realized I could see myself reflected in the window. Brushing the hair out of my face, I glanced down at the book resting on my knees. After the boy and his father had gotten off the train at the next station, I was left alone in the silence. I raised my face to look at the fogged-up window behind the now empty seats. The lights of the town grew dimmer, and in the dark and distorted reflection of the train interior, I thought I saw the hazy figure of Takako sitting next to me. I looked to my side, but the seat was empty. As I returned my gaze to the window, all I saw was my own lone self sitting in the empty train car. Is Takako dead? Are both of them dead? Stepping into the living room, I could see the cloudy morning sky through the window, its canvas contemplated by a multitude of buildings towering in the distance, like they were an elaborate bar graph. I flipped the switch on the wall, leaving only the lamp on the nightstand on. A groan escaped my lips as I felt the cold in the room. I lifted off a paperback from the shelf below the phone. I bought the thing shortly before my business trip at a bookstore near the station. After making myself comfortable on the sofa next to the window, I swiped off the dust from the book I had just picked up and began reading from the page that I had my bookmark. Yet after only a few or so pages, I had to return to the first page again. I went at it again, skimming through the parts I understood on my first go, turning pages with one hand while adjusting my glasses with the other. The somewhat loosened metallic part of my working, reading computer glasses turned with a low creak. The washing machine I turned on before coming to the room let out a loud beep just as I was about halfway done with the book. I closed the book and went to pick up my laundry. The orange hue of the morning sky entered my vision through the window as I rose from the sofa. By the time I finished hanging the last of my clothes, the white shirt of my work outfit, the sun that was only slightly peeking from the horizon when I started had risen high into the sky. A stray gust of wind drifted in through the window, making my laundry flutter like the many legs of some octopus-like being. As I gave Takako's shirt on the hanger a few pats, my hand hit something hard around the vicinity of the breast pocket. I slid my fingers into it and pulled out a wet business card. I turned it over, but the name was too washed out to read. In the end, I returned to my room and flipped the thing into the trash can. Inhaling a lungful of air, I glanced at my paperback still resting on the sofa, and then the fridge, before my gaze finally settled on the calendar hanging on the wall. An illustration of an autumn landscape decorated its current page, right below the name of the month. More specifically, it displayed a post-harvest field split apart by a long road in the middle. The road itself was flanked by trees on both sides, their fallen leaves covering the ground with spots of orange and yellow. The hands of the wall clock next to the calendar completely overlapped. I rubbed my right shoulder with my left hand and continued to the kitchen. For breakfast, I whipped up some scrambled eggs with salad. Once I'd finished eating it, I began cleaning my apartment. First, I separated the boxes in the corridor into things I should keep, things I should throw away, and things I should send to Takako's family. I brushed the dust off one of the boxes I decided to send. I grabbed a magic marker from the living room and popped off its cap. Looking carefully at the postcard I took from the bundle near the phone, I wrote the address of her house on the front of the box and mine on the back. Before taping the box shut, I slipped in a letter I wrote for her family. It was an apology for being so late to send it. As I finished packing, I returned to the living room and phoned the delivery service, booking them for the earliest possible time. After placing the phone back in its place, I turned around and noticed the boxes all separated into categories of what should be left here and what should be sent away. Not a single box had been marked to be thrown away. Things I couldn't figure out uses for, I instantly discarded, while the rest went back into their boxes. By the end of it, I didn't have enough items to fill even a single box. I picked up the scissors and packing tape from the floor. Is this everything? Yes, thank you very much. As the middle-aged man carried the last of my boxes with his broad arms into the elevator, a younger and taller man handed me the receipt. The younger man gave me a brief bow and hurried away to the elevator that the older man was keeping open for him. Once I saw them leave, I locked my door and returned to the living room. Placing my wallet in the bamboo basket, I heaved a brief sigh. I glanced at my feet to see the rays of the sun almost reaching them. After directing a brief glance at the clock on the wall, I stepped onto the balcony and touched the denim panties on the hanger to check if they had dried. As I gazed outside, I spotted the balcony of the mansion to my left. The futon that was there when I was hanging my own laundry had since disappeared. I collected my clothes and closed the balcony door behind me. I sat down next to the mountain of clothes and started folding them. It felt somewhat cold in the apartment, even after closing the windows, but the sunlight filtering in from outside warmed me up a little. After folding the jackets, I separated the clothespins from the underwear and folded them as well. I grabbed the matching socks by the cuff and folded one into the other to create a ball. I heard the floor creak as I picked up one black sock and continued to look for the next. As I returned the dark blue sock I picked up by mistake to my mountain of accumulated laundry, the living room door opened. Takako appeared in her pajamas and continued to the kitchen, stifling a yawn with one hand. What is going on? I followed her with my gaze until she disappeared, but what? I continued staring at the wall that Takako vanished behind for a couple of seconds, when her head suddenly popped into view again. Do we have anything to eat? No, I'm hungry. Takako gave her belly a light pat. It's way past lunchtime, you'll have to manage until dinner. Do we have any snacks? No. What? Actually, With that, Takako disappeared into the kitchen. I could hear the sounds of the opening drawers. No way! There's really nothing here! Did you already eat all the cookies in the jar? When did we even have such a thing? Whatever. Guess I'll just eat sugar or something. Hey! I'll start preparing dinner after I'm done with the laundry, okay? What are you going to make? I absent-mindedly checked the calendar and the clock on the wall. I don't know. What do you want? Sukiyaki! I don't have enough soy sauce. Then I'll go buy some. Takako emerged from the kitchen holding a cup of barley tea. Is there anything else you need? Soy sauce and meat for sukiyaki. I can manage the rest. I'm not seeing any shirataki either. Takako opened the fridge and looked inside. That too. Is that all? Guess I could also use some detergent. Gotcha! Takako opened the living room door and disappeared beyond it. The door closed behind her with a thud. I could see the orange rays of the evening sun reflected on the polished wood. The room fell completely silent, with only the distant cawing of ravens from outside reaching my ears. They really are doing time jumps right when you don't expect it, aren't they? Okay, so I think what was going on with Sachiko was doing laundry in the future, and then it goes back to the past to another time when she was doing laundry at some point in the past. I think that's what happened. Oh, man. My reading was interrupted by the sound of the rice cooker signaling that the rice was done. I slid the bookmark into my paperback and left it on the sofa. Stepping into the kitchen, I opened the fridge. I grabbed all the eggs from the holders on the top shelf of the door, then reached for the oil and a bowl in the bottom cabinet. After cracking the eggs on the side of the bowl, I discarded their shells in the garbage basket below the sink. I picked up a pair of chopsticks and parted the two pieces ever so slightly, then gently began moving them back and forth to mix the white with the yolk. As I was doing that, I heard the front door behind me unlock. I heard the floor creak, and the living room door opened. I'm back! Takako left the shopping bag on the table and pulled up a nearby chair to sit down. Welcome home. Leaving the bowl with my mixed egg, I moved to the kitchen and checked the contents of the shopping bag Takako brought back. I found a pack of sukiyaki meat with a bargain sale sticker on it, some chrysanthemum greens, shirataki. What about the soy sauce? It should be at the bottom. I found it under the shirataki bag. I thanked her, and she responded by raising her arm. Once I got out everything I needed from the bag, I brought them to the kitchen. I left the frying pan on the stove. I turned its knob 3 times until the flame lit up, then drained the oil from the frying pan with a kitchen towel as I heated it up. There was a beep, followed by the sound of the TV. As the probability of rain remains high, we recommend taking an umbrella in the event of going out. It was a weather forecast. They said it's going to rain tomorrow. Huh. I reached out to the bottle of Mentsuyu on the cabinet. I'm struggling with these words, sorry. Mentsuyu on the cabinet, and dripped a few drops of it into my egg bowl before stirring the mixture with my chopsticks again. Once I was finished with that, I spilled about half of what was in the bowl into the frying pan. A sharp sizzling sound followed. I rotated the frying pan so the beaten eggs would cover its entire surface, then popped the bubbles that would appear on it with my chopsticks. A delicious smell began to fill the entire kitchen. I could hear the sound of changing TV channels from the living room. Are the frying pans over there? Or the frying eggs over there? Takako momentarily stopped fiddling with the remote control. Yes! The eggs in the frying pan started to congeal. I folded the whole thing in half with my chopsticks. I drained the oil from the newly opened area with a kitchen towel, and after moving the folded egg to it, drained the other half as well. Finally, I unfolded the egg and spilled the rest of the bowl's contents on it. Smells like we're having a feast tonight. You're about the only one who gets this excited over a sukiyaki and a fried egg. I love fried eggs! As the egg began to harden, I folded it again. Food! Yeah, food, am I right? While also making some minor adjustments to its shape with my spatula. I'm pretty sure this is a dream, though. Oh yeah? Yes. I see. Well, I don't care as long as I get my food. As I sat up from the sofa, I immediately clutched my head in response to a sudden, sharp jolt of pain. I glanced out the window to see the sun already vanishing beyond the horizon and a few stray stars shining in the night sky. My laundry was all neatly folded next to my feet. There was no pot on the dining table in front of the TV, nor any shopping bag on the other table. I get it now. I stood up and peeked out the living room door to check the boxes. They were indeed gone. I closed the door again, then turned around and stuffed my dried clothes into their designated drawers before getting ready to make my second dinner tonight. It was all a dream. You hate to see it. That would explain it. Takako's like, I don't care if I am just a figment of your imagination. As long as I eat, I'm happy. Be like Takako. I closed the window behind my desk to keep the autumn cold out. Upon returning to my desk and glancing at all the documents littering it, I tapped the middle finger of my right hand against the desk surface a number of times. I read through a document and signed it with a pen from the pouch to my right. There was a field for the date next to my name. I looked away from the papers to the wall behind the rest of the office desks. Fixed to it were a round clock and a whiteboard listing our schedules. It contained our names, whereabouts, the times we'll be leaving the office, and other information. The names included Mizuno Sachiko, Oita Fumi, Inukai Takehiko, and Sawatari Annalise? Sawatari Annalise. Above Mizuno Sachiko, there was an empty space with traces of Takako's name on it. Fumi, can I get your review on this? I added the date on the whiteboard to the document. I'm a bit busy right now. Inukai handed a memory stick and a bundle of freshly printed files to Fumi. Fumi took out a color sample from her desk. What is it? The poster for the firework festival. I see. I'll give it a look later. Just leave it here. I only made a few minor adjustments, so maybe I could just hand it in like that. Inukai glanced at the paper in his hand. Are you confident it's okay? More or less. Make sure you attach your photo to the thing so everyone knows it's your work and not mine, okay? I have some extra ID pictures. Can I use them? Make it look like those vegetable packs you often see at the Whole Foods market. You know, the ones with pictures depicting the farmer who grew them? Fumi handed Inukai a pen case with drawing instructions. I'm getting worried about this. Fumi, can you look at him? Okay. I'm getting worried about this. Fumi, can you look at it for him after all? I'm almost done, so I'll make sure to check it out today. I put it into their game. Inukai gave Fumi's desk, covered in plush toys and textbooks, a quick glance and placed the paper there. Hey, don't put it on my plushes! Fumi lifted the paper off the top of the little round sheep, then put it into a plastic case that served as a scaffold for the pile of textbooks on her desk. I could see Takako's barren desk beyond it. There was only an empty glass jar on it, aside from a few papers intended for the new employee taking over her job. A bell similar to that of schools reverberating in the room. I'll go outside. Inukai left the office. I opened a file and after picking out a few colored pictures from it, slipped them into a brown envelope alongside the documents I had signed. Fumi stood up as I was jotting down the zip code, seemingly having finished her job early. Did you bring your lunch today? I'm sorry, I couldn't wake up early this morning. I see. I'll drop by a convenience store on my way back. Would you like something? No, I'm good. I see. I opened the bottom drawer, stuffed the envelope inside, then locked it. I pulled out my wallet from my handbag, resting next to the drawer, and stood up. I'll be off then. Later! I addressed Fumi as she was on her way to the kitchen. Annalise is taking over. The bell affixed to the corner of the cafe's door gave off a chime. I sat down at the counter and ordered a 1-coin lunch. As I absent-mindedly observed the steward in a black and white suit prepare a coffee, someone rose from their seat at the back of the restaurant and stood behind me. Sachi. Or Sachi. Sachi. I turned around to see Nagasaki raising her hand in greeting. You were here? I was waving at you when you came in. I didn't notice at all. So I've seen. I was starting to wonder if this was some elaborate game on your part. I'm not into things like that. Nagasaki placed the saucer with her coffee on the counter and sat down next to me. What did you order? Lunch. Did you eat already? I was enjoying a cake. A cheesecake with green tea? Nah, I tried something else today. You come here a lot? Yeah. I told you this place was close to the clinic. Nagasaki crossed her legs and beckoned for the steward, ultimately ordering another cup of coffee. You came here before lunchtime? I came about 30 minutes ago. I finished my morning shift early. Well, I guess that's usually how things go anyway. The steward came over and placed 2 cups of coffee on the counter, one for Nagasaki and one for me. Thank you. Nagasaki passed my cup to me. Before long, I received the salad part of my lunch set as well. Do you know what... Wow. Fariben is? Fariben is? Nagasaki addressed me just as I stuck my wooden fork into the salad. What? Fariben. No, never heard of it. Yeah, I guess you wouldn't have. What is it? Even I've only heard about it for the first time last week. One of our patients was crying that he had lost his Fariben. You should have asked him about it. I placed a forkful of salad into my mouth. I could feel the taste of the traditional dressing and the onions spreading across my tongue. Is this a real word? Well, it's the name of a video game on Steam. It looks like it is a real word, but there's no definition. It's common practice to change the subject when a patient starts talking about something strange, so as to not encourage their delusions. So it was just something he made up in his mind? Well, the same patient came to the clinic today and was overjoyed about having finally found his Fariben. Curiosity was gnawing away at me, but all I could do was say I was happy for him and end the conversation there. Nagasaki took a sip of her still steaming coffee. Fariben. Yep, Fariben. I put a slice of tomato into my mouth. It melted in my mouth with a cool sensation and a hint of sweetness. I'm afraid I have no idea what it could be. But it doesn't sound that weird to say, does it? Like, it gives you the feeling that you might have heard the word somewhere. I'd say it's entirely possible it might have come up in some picture book or something. Nagasaki placed a palm on her forehead, making an excited smile. I don't get it. Do you get a lot of these things at work? Absolutely. When you work with these kinds of patients, you tend to hear an unusual word here and there, like beam surfer. What's that? This patient would apparently wake up laughing in the middle of the night, but come morning, he could no longer remember what cracked him up to that extent. But since he was laughing that much, he figured it must have been something hilarious. So one time he left a pen and paper next to his pillow before hitting the sack. He woke up laughing as usual, but jotted down everything before going back to sleep so he could remember. That morning came and all he found on the paper were those 2 words. Makes me wonder what's so funny about it. I don't know. Nor did he. As I finished swallowing the last tomato, the steward brought the main dish, a sandwich with smoked salmon and cream cheese. This game loves its food porn, doesn't it? Oh my lord. There is so much food in this game, it makes me hungry. It was separated into 3 pieces to make it easier to eat. They're not even showing pictures of the food, they're just describing it, and that's enough. I wiped my fingers with a napkin, picked up one of the pieces, and put it into my mouth. Then I took a gulp of the coffee, which had now cooled off just enough to be comfortable to drink. Feeling the warmth of the cup with my palms, I glanced beyond the counter to see the steward washing some dishes. Nagasaki added a few spoons of sugar to her coffee. After I finished eating lunch, I told Nagasaki about the dream I had yesterday. So, you made her dinner despite knowing it was a dream? Yes. Nagasaki chuckled. I got a little excited, I guess. I haven't spoken to her in ages. Well, good for you. But as I said, it's best not to encourage this kind of thing. Nagasaki gave me a brief glance. I suppose that's true. Otherwise, it might end up interfering with your everyday life. I know that, but doesn't it make for an interesting story? It might also severely disorient you. I'm aware of that too. Nagasaki stuffed her hands in her pockets and leaned closer to me. Do you have any medicine that would make it go away? Why not drop by my clinic? I could prescribe something for you. I'll think about it. Don't need to be scared. It's the kind of place that's frequented by housewives when they have no one to talk to. Nagasaki spun around in her chair and stood up. I think I should be going. All right. Once Nagasaki had left, I finished my coffee, paid for everything, and exited the cafe myself. I glanced up at the narrow patch of gray sky visible between the buildings surrounding me, noticing more and more clouds scattered about it. I checked my wristwatch, then crossed the street and entered a convenience store. After I picked up a drink and some gum to keep me awake, I returned to the office. Gum to keep her awake, huh? That's interesting, isn't it? Because she gave that to Takako earlier. To help Takako stay awake. New characters popped up on the monitor with each new tap of the keyboard. White letters on a black backdrop of a CRT screen. Sunrays fell in stripes on my desk through the slits of the blinds. My slender fingers, the nails on their ends all well kempt, were tapping away at the keyboard, following a rhythmic pace. I hear something in my left ear, that's weird. At times, I could hear the passing of cars and nearby trains in the distance. Tap, tap, tap. I saved the presentation file, Control-S, and paused the rest of my hands a little. Pushing my chair away from the desk, I extended my legs and stretched my back. I surveyed the outdoor scenery through the blinds. Spots of white clouds could be seen drifting along the blue sky between the towering buildings. The afternoon rain that accumulated on the asphalt sprang into the air each time a passing car rolled into it. I pushed my chair back, returning my silent gaze to the monitor. The flickering CRT screen displayed the particulars of a presentation detailing our company's restructuring. As I was confirming the slides, Fumi emerged from the kitchen. She placed a steaming cup on my desk. Have some tea. Thanks. Have you finished already? Fumi looked at my monitor. Yes, the deadline was tomorrow, but it seems like I'll be able to finish it today. In that case, we might finally be able to take a break on the weekend. Yeah. I'd appreciate a little change of pace. I know. I collected the documents in a binder, which I then placed in the top drawer of my desk. I placed all the scattered writing utensils back into the pen holder. The hands on the wall clock indicated that it was a few minutes before midnight. Out of the 4 other office desks, Fumi's was the only one yet to be cleaned up. Inukai went home before we started our late-night overtime, while Fumi was currently in the bathroom. It was dark as pitch beyond the windows. My office phone rang, and I promptly picked up the receiver. At midnight? Hello? I'm locking up the building in 10 minutes. Are you going to need the lights for the night? It was the night watchman. The office door opened, and Fumi came into the room. I'm leaving. What about you, Fumi? Me too. I gave her a nod and removed my hand from the receiver. We're leaving right now. All right. Don't forget to lock the doors. Of course. I placed the receiver back to its place. Let's go. Catching the last train could be tough. Need a lift? Fumi tapped her skirt pocket to draw attention to her car keys. No, I'm good. I might need to drop by another place first. I see. The inside of the taxi lit up as the car in the opposing lane came closer, then fell dark again as soon as it passed us. I could see all sorts of small lights beyond the window. I leaned back against my seat, heaving a sigh. I briefly regarded the driver's graying hair before shifting my gaze back to the window. Juxtaposed with the multitude of lights beaming from the skyscrapers and the rows of cars speeding past, I could see the reflection of a positively exhausted woman. Upon closer inspection, the woman's face, now distorted in apparent disgust, reminded me of the pictures I'd seen of my mother. We have to hit a traffic jam. This could take a while. The driver said so. I see. I narrowed my eyes to more thoroughly examine the driver through the back mirror. However, the visor of his hat hid his eyes as he slightly tilted his head down. I unlocked the front door with an audible click. I'm back! My voice was swallowed by the darkness of the corridor. Entering the living room, I flipped on the light switch and continued to the kitchen, where I opened the fridge and helped myself to a jug of tea. I placed the cup on the silver tray, but as I turned around to return the jug to the fridge, my vision was enveloped by darkness, forcing me to lean on the fridge door. As I hung my head, waiting for my eyesight to return to normal, the abrupt sensation of the very floor trying to swallow me whole sent me to my knees. Does she have vertigo? After a while, my vision began to gradually normalize. It had been a while since I got a dizzy spell that bad. I couldn't help but chuckle at it all. With my vision still occasionally blinking out, I felt some of my strength in my legs return. This prompted me to try and stand up, but I ended up losing my balance and hitting my head against the fridge. As the fit finally passed, I stood up, placed the jug of the tea I'd managed not to spill in the fridge, and returned to the living room to get changed. That's the second one of those that she's got in this game. Poor girl. Man, she's having a pretty hard life, isn't she? As I entered the brightly lit morning office, I found Takako, Fumi, and Inukai already at their desks. I could hear constant cracking sounds coming from Takako's direction as she was energetically chewing on a pink-colored candy. What on earth are you eating so early in the morning? Fumi opened with that question as she passed behind her. That was the same candy the owner of this building had given to Takako, the one I left in the office kitchen. I see you just can't get enough of those hard candies. Hard candies? A lump of sugar with a fancy shape, basically. Takako's pretty much addicted to the things, so the owner of this building brings her all sorts of rare ones. Those don't even look like they should be edible. Inukai considered Takako with narrowed eyes. You want some, Fumi? No. Haha! Sorry for hoarding all these beauties for myself. Takako popped a sakura petal-shaped candy with bean jam into her mouth. Are those actually good? They have just the right amount of sweetness and feel great to bite into. After Sachi took away my cookies last night, all I could think about was eating these as soon as I came back to the office. Don't come crying to me when you start putting on weight. No worries on that front. I work out. Do you even know how much you have to run to burn that lump of sugar? Fumi made a sinister smile. Anyway, I would like to begin our morning meeting. Okay. The three replied in unison. Okay. That's how they said it. It's a little confusing sometimes which voice I have to use, but I think I got it. We have more clients than usual this month. As such, I would advise you all to maintain a clean desk so that no documents get mixed up. All right. Inukai was the only one who answered me right away. Sachi, do you think my desk is fine? To tell the truth, yours is the one I'm most worried about. Countless sheets of paper covered Takako's desk in complete disarray, alongside a whole assortment of various writing utensils. I need them all, though. How many designs do you want to draw at the same time? Keep the papers you're not using in the folder. But that's a pain. Think about it this way. If you keep your desk clean, maybe that pesky little fairy will stop stealing your receipts. Pesky will... yeah, that's good. Inukai addressed Takako from beyond his perfectly clean and well-maintained workspace, as the latter began reluctantly organizing the papers littering her own. Takako is my spirit animal? Yes, Buster. Yes. Takako gave him a resentful glare, but that only served to make her accidentally drop all the papers she was holding. Are my plush toys a problem too? Fumi raised a hand. They're not really a problem, but I do think you have a bit too many. Maybe try reducing their number a little. Dozens upon dozens of plush toys populated Fumi's desk, surrounding her monitor like a small army. Most of them were white, round sheep. Maybe give those to Takako. Ask for her to count the sheep, then she could sleep well at night. Where do you keep getting them anyway? Inukai picked up one of Fumi's plushes that rolled down to the floor, placed it back on its place on her desk. I bought a few at a toy store, but most of them came from the UFO catcher at the arcade. Don't you get sleepy surrounded by so many sheep? Takako sounded a laugh. I'd appreciate it if you could get rid of those bottles as well, Takako. I pointed at the colorful mountain of bottles on her desk. The now empty energy drink bottles were built into a huge and highly unstable-looking castle, resembling something out of a Western picture book. The package of their brand changed every few months, and Takako kept buying them every time that happened. Hey, it wasn't easy collecting them, you know. What did you even collect those for? Don't you get the urge to collect things when there are different types? Well, in that case, it'd be nice if you either didn't leave them lying all over the place or yell at me when I end up throwing them away. I still can't believe you just throw them away like that. What do you do with them? Takako picked up a red bottle that was closest to her. Watch. She placed it on the windowsill. And now you gaze at them. Inukai, can you bring the garbage bags? Sure. Whoa, wait! You can't do this to me! Takako reached out to Inukai, who was already headed towards the kitchen. Hey, think of all that fun you'll have collecting them again. You monster! Look, remember when we went to the waste disposal facility back in elementary school? Takako interrupted me. Huh? Takako made a gesture with her palms to calm me down and slowly began. It took 2 hours by train and shuttle bus to reach the incinerator plant. It was this really silent backwater place up in the mountains near some rice fields. Anyway, when I saw the heaps of garbage being consumed by 800-degree flames, I felt sad for all those things that have to travel up that road, only to be incinerated at some faraway no-name facility. Takako launched into some mind-boggling story again. So I've decided to hold on to things and treasure them for as long as I can. How are we supposed to clean up without throwing things away? I can't imagine how you live with her, Mizuno. It's a test of one's ability to deal with her antics. What do you mean exactly? Well, let's say I buy her a new pair of shoes. As she starts wearing the new ones and gets used to them, she'll eventually stuff the old ones away in the back of the shoe cabinet. All I have to do then is throw them away once she forgets she ever had them. By the way, Sachi, where did my white mules go? You never had any to begin with. The sudden ringing of the phone interrupted our conversation. I returned to my desk and picked it up. Hello, this is Clover Design. After placing the receiver between my left ear and shoulder, I began looking for a pen and some paper with my now freed hands. Give it back! Takako snatched one of her glass bottles from Inukai's hands, but he then just picked up another one. Hey! I tapped my desk a few times. The office fell silent as the two looked at me. Mr. Sasaki, thank you for calling. Takako began filling her desk drawers with the bottles. I understand. Takako, Mr. Sasaki wants to speak with you on line 3. Okay. Hello, it's me. I pushed the hold button to put my receiver down, while Takako pushed the same button on her desk's phone as it began blinking. All right. Now's our chance to clean up this mess. Hey, wait a sec! Takako. If my memories of our elementary school summer vacation are anything to go by, we did have to bring a kamaboko board to the pool. Right, Sachi? Kamaboko? Takako used a corkscrew to open a hole in the board, pressed a piece of string through it, then hung it around her neck. It was a bit too complicated for anyone to understand what she was trying to convey. Why would you carry such a thing around with you? Inukai, who went over to Takako's desk to ask her for advice on coloring, raised his shoulders and made a contemplative face. You really don't know? Takako took out a piece of paper and pen from the desk drawer and drew a tamaboko with a piece of string on it. She then separated its area into 3 parts with a huge T and wrote class on top, name on the bottom right, and address on the bottom left. That's what I'm talking about. Surely you've seen that before. Not at my school, at least. You have, haven't you, Fumi? Takako leaned over from her monitor and showed Fumi the picture. I have. It's used to make sure people know how to contact your family in case you end up drowning. Oh. I see. I wonder if it's only practiced in southern prefectures, given that... Miss Fumi is familiar with it, while I'm not. I've had a discussion about this after coming to Tokyo, and even in the same area, there are apparently schools that do it and ones that don't. Fumi went on in a disinterested tone while tapping away on her calculator. I see. This is about as alien to me as that Mont Blanc ice cream thing. Inukai returned to his desk to resume his work. Is there anything that the school in your area did the same way as us? Oh, is there anything that the school in your area did the same way as us? With pool-related things, I mean. I don't feel like starting a weird game, but... Did you have to collect colored balls during your pool lessons? Yeah, my place had that too. I'm pretty good at swimming, so I collected a bunch. That sounds like something you'd be good at, Inukai. What's that supposed to mean? When you had to collect the remaining balls, did you go in circles with the others until you made a whirlpool? We did that, yeah. Right? All schools make you do that. Takako was busy having a conversation unrelated to work, ultimately dragging Inukai into the mix as well. I also remember trying to do an underwater somersault and getting my nose full of water. I wonder why it hurts when that happens. You're the only one dumb enough to pull a stunt like that. I decided to interrupt their never-ending conversation. Oh, I get it. Yeah, can't say that ever happened to me either. Noticing the look of reproach on my face, Inukai returned to his desk and resumed work. Really? Takako, now leaning toward Fumi to address her next, finally noticed my expression and promptly returned to work. I inserted the poster sample into a tube and tucked it under my arm, then picked up the bag with all the receipts and my notebook inside before standing up to leave. Takako addressed me as I jotted down my destination and the exact time I'd be going home. Where are you off to? We have to deliver the things that advertisement column requested of us. And there's a meeting with that poster, I believe. Fumi answered in my place. I see. Well, good luck. I hope you buy me something tasty on the way. I'm getting all these voices screwed up. My bad, guys. Usually visual novels make it clear who's talking, but not this one. So, for the rest of this year, I am going to screw up from time to time. You're just going to have to bear with me. After finishing my errand, I called a taxi to make it back to the office. The sun reflecting from the glass-made double doors leading inside forced me to narrow my eyes. You had to pass through 2 sets of doors to get inside the building. After the first set, there were stairs leading underground to the right and a stretch of mailboxes with a guardroom to the left. The gray-haired man behind the guardroom's window gave me a small bow, a gesture I returned. I climbed the stairs beyond the second set of doors, reaching the upper floor. All the rooms in this L-shaped corridor had nameplates, reminding me of classrooms in the school. The nameplate of the nearest room said Clover. I saw an old signboard in front of the door with the text Clover Design Office printed on it. Honestly, it looked like something you'd find in front of a martial arts dojo or something. Ha! I heard a scream from inside. I took a step towards the door, ready to fling it open, when it opened by itself. Welcome back, Sachi. What's going on here? Look! Takako opened her hands to reveal a tiny ladybug crawling along her palms. It had a red back and several white spots on it. It was on Fumi's shoulder. Must have landed on her when she was outside. I'm not good with bugs. The one responsible for the scream joined the conversation. But Fumi, didn't you draw ladybugs on that lunchbox wrapping paper design? I'm okay with them if they're just drawings. But ladybugs are cute. No way! I can't look at those wriggling legs. You don't need to go out of your way and hate all bugs just for the cutesy appeal. It's not a cockroach or anything. Takako let out a self-satisfied laugh. As for Fumi, she glared at Takako with condensed ire. I can imagine you being okay with cockroaches too, Miss Takako. I guess so. I just don't like how they're usually dirty and crawl real fast. You helped the cockroach we found in the kitchen escape. Inukai raised his face, continuing the conversation. I don't enjoy senseless killing. Takako puffed out her chest as Fumi went all pale. In the kitchen? You're kidding, right? It was 2 days ago. You're exaggerating, Fumi. If you're that scared of bugs, then maybe we should start keeping a lizard in the kitchen. Yeah, and I'd end up unable to use the kitchen ever again. But lizards are cute. I mean, they are usually only this big. I bet all boys like them. Isn't that right, Inukai? Takako was showing the size between her thumb and index finger. Well, I don't hate them at least. But there are plenty of big lizards too. Ah, that's right. Back home, I saw one that was over 20 centimeters long. Passing by Takako, I placed the bags I'd been carrying on my desk. Don't even think about bringing any in here. I've never even heard of an office that kept lizards before. It could be our mascot. Takako considered the ceiling in a display of contemplation. Want to change our logo to a lizard? No, there's a meaning in our clover design. Takako pointed at Inukai. No one cares, so can you let that ladybug... No one cares, so can you let that ladybug outside already? Okay. Takako exited through the door and stepped out to the corridor I just came from earlier. How'd it go with the client? Fumi, calming down with Takako's departure, turned to me. I think it's going steady enough. They didn't ask to change anything, at least. I see. I picked up the paper bag that I'd left on my desk. Yes, I brought presents. I pulled out 2 boxes, one small, one big, and handed them to Fumi. I'm sorry, I was in a rush, so I didn't have much time to choose. Oh, thank you. Give the small one to Inukai and share the big one with Takako. Fumi handed the smaller box to Inukai. Thank you very much. Inukai fixed the position of his glasses and considered the box. Fumi left the big box on her desk. Anything happen while I was away? Not really. Well, Takako was goofing off instead of working, so there's that. Are you guys talking about me? Fumi made sure that Takako, who we had just heard coming through the corridor, could hear her. Ah, Sachi. Where are my presents? Fumi has them. Share them with her. Konpeito? Takako looked at the box on Fumi's desk. She then returned to her own desk and glanced at the clock. Wow, you were quick. I accidentally boarded the express train. Huh, that's kinda unlike you. Takako chuckled as I made an indignant face. I was in a hurry when changing trains and ended up boarding a behind-schedule express at the place where my train was supposed to be. Did the conductor find you? Yes, I had to pay for a new ticket. Everyone misses or mistakes their train once in a while. Right, Inukai? Fumi considered the joyous Takako and my indignant face for a while before finally turning to Inukai. That's right. Last year when I was going to see my parents, I realized I couldn't find my ticket after I left my bullet train. How'd you get out of the station? I explained what happened to the station worker and they let me out. You should make yourself one of those railroad-affiliated credit cards. All their transactions are computerized and remain in the records, so you'd never have to worry about tickets or explaining yourself again. Fumi pulled out a silver credit card from her purse. That was like a commercial just now. Hey, I want to do it too! Give me that card for a sec! Takako leaned over the desk and reached out towards Fumi's purse. Should we expect a 30-second version from you? Enough! Enough! Commercials are not a part of our commission, so I would appreciate it if you all would return to your seats already. Alright. I struck my desk with the binder I had in my hand, putting an end to their frolicking. The Konpeito box was left at the area connecting Fumi's and Takako's desks. It contained a piece of paper with a faint flower design and lots of colorful candies. Takako picked up a blue star and put it into her mouth. Sweets go well with tea. Fumi held her sweets go well with tea. Fumi held her personal teacup in her hands. Do you know any famous Indian black teas? You mean like Darjeeling or Assam? You got it. I'll give you this konpeito as a reward. That entire box belongs to both of us, though. Takako began chewing on the candies, filling the room with crackling sounds. As she was taking her new konpeito, her finger struck the bottom of the box. Huh? With fewer candies in the box, the cherry blossom design at the bottom became partially visible. How can you eat this fast? Jeez, I've only had time to eat a few. Oh, damn. Hey, let's slow down a bit so it lasts until the end of our shift. How old are you? Sachi went out of her way to get us this present. We shouldn't wolf it down all at once. In that case, I need to go check something. Okay. Takako stood up while Fumi was still gazing at the box. Takako walked to the door, then suddenly turned around and came back. Fumi gave her a confused look. What's wrong? Well, you know, I got this feeling I might find the box empty when I came back. Takako bent her back slightly. Come on, I won't eat them all. God knows how much weight I might put on if I did that. Okay then. I can't believe you get so suspicious over a few candies. Haven't you heard all wars that broke out over sweets? No, I have not. I'll be going then. Alright. Takako walked to the door and actually left the room this time. Totally ate all the candies. Fumi, after making sure that Takako was really gone, took out a white piece of paper from her desk and placed all the konpeito from the box on it. She then carefully folded up the paper and hid it inside her drawer. Before long, the door opened again, revealing Takako. She glanced at the empty box, then at Fumi, then back at the empty box. How could you? Those were mine! I'm just messing with you. Fumi produced the paper from her drawer. Also, those were for both of us. That's funny. Can I save here? I can and I will. That's good. Yep. Save again just to be sure. Can never save too many times with any video game. You cannot persuade me otherwise. That will wrap up today's episode of SeaBed, a Yuri visual novel. That was fun. Very confusing. I wonder what happened to Takako, and I wonder why Sachi keeps thinking about her and keeps seeing her. We'll definitely find out more in the future, that's for sure. So I will be back next Sunday to continue my playthrough of SeaBed, and I'll be back Tuesday and Friday to play a brand new release from East Asia Soft. So something to look forward to, huh? Thanks Buster, Nuru, Poga, and Nian for being here. Shout out to the lurkers. Shout out to everyone who watches this on YouTube after the fact. That'll bring the stream to an end. On behalf of East Asia Soft, I have been Skull. Have yourselves a great day and a great week, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.